share a mission that John Murphy and I flew, and there's some other characters here in the room. When you flew your first Mach 3 flight as a crew member in the program, you then hosted a party for the squadron, for all the crew members and their wives and that. Well, this particular Saturday night, an inspection was taking place, and now retired General Pat Howland was the Inspector General for Strategic Air Command. He was in there giving us a former wing commander for us. And matter of fact, he hired me for the program. So about halfway through the party, all of a sudden, there's kind of like a laugh-in, if you remember that. There's kind of something going on in the background we can't quite put our finger on. And John and I get approached, I think we're both majors at that point, by the colonel in charge of operations, and he said, you need to come down to intelligence tomorrow after you go to church. So we look at each other and say, okay, what's going on? You'll find out tomorrow. So I get a call at 7 in the morning, get John and get down here. So I go and call John. I said, John, no church today. So we go down to the vault and we look and said, Middle East. So I called my wife and said, I'll be home in about, this was probably on 11:30. I'll be home for about 10 minutes, grab my bag, and we're heading out on a tanker. And the senior crew, whose a number of his books are out there, Rich Graham and Don Emmons, would fly the airplane over and we'd meet them, get over there before them to greet them on the ground. In the meantime, General Howland pulls his team back and we're doing what we're supposed to do. What I don't know, and this is a Paul Harvey story. The colonel who talked to us the night before had called my daughter, my middle daughter, 7 years old, and was wondering where I was. And I'll tell you the rest of that, how it was revealed. So we arrive in England. The aircraft arrives in England. About 2 days later, we're getting an execution. The mission is going to be 9 hours and 45 minutes because the French will not allow us to overfly. So we have to fly around Spain and Portugal, go through the Middle East, 5 refuelings, and come back. Well, the idea was a number of other people. We go through the briefing, and one of the Brits said, well, what does the family know about you, what you're doing? And I said, well, as I left, my wife said, I don't want to hear about you on television, you know, because that was our handle. Let's not hear anything about us. And Willie Lawson, the colonel, said, well, wait a minute, Buzz. I have to share a story. So I called up and I talked to one of your daughters. And I said, can you tell me where your father is? Oh, I don't know where my father is. Can you take a message? No, I can't take a message. And he asked her one more time, can you tell me where your father is? And in a whispery voice, she goes, I think he's out spying. So who are we kidding? Anyway, John and I get in the airplane, 4 in the morning, ready to go, and all of a sudden the crew chief comes running up the ladder, 24-hour slip, blowing dust in the Middle East. So we go back to bed, or we head back to the quarters, and we're not tired, you know, so the maids come in and we're having a few hooks.
Glasses of sherry.
Glasses of sherry. So who are these guys? Next night we do the same thing. Right away the engines start, no, the dust. The third night, we're about to start, and John and I go at each other and say, boy, I sure hope this is, and all of a sudden the crew chief comes up, hold, hold, and we go, oh no. And they came up with about 250 of those black SR Titans you see out there, because all the members who were with us wanted an SR Titan that had actually flown, ridden operationally in the Middle East. We took off. It was a successful mission. We came back, and I'll tell you, there's no greater feeling when you land back there and you come down the ladder and there's about 150 of your closest cohorts with their thumbs up and very pleased that you're now executing a mission that was being monitored all along the way by President Carter. And that's my story.
As Terry said, that's really tough to follow up. I don't have war stories in regards to that. Can you hear? Okay. I had the honor during the '94 timeframe when the program was being talked about as being reactivated. So I went up to one of these guys' cohorts, Jay Murphy, who was the program manager at Lockheed, and they said, Jay, I want to work for you because I really love this airplane. It was part of the reason I went to Lockheed in 1980. As a result, he looked at me and says, I've heard a little bit about you, but sit down, we got stuff to do. So I got a chance to work with him, and my predecessor, John Deegan, who was the chief engineer at the time. And when John retired, he says, "Guess what? You're it." Eyes went this big, going, uh-oh. And I tell you, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. One of the most impressive, as you see in that movie, we sat at the end of the runway when we took the airplanes and refurbished them, re-tank sealed, took the airplane apart, cleaned it up, got it working again. And when you're standing at the end of the runway and one of these things flies over your head, it just makes you very, very proud to be part of this team and very honored and very humble. And as a result, it's one of my loves. In addition to the 117, as I said, this is one of the most impressive airplanes I've ever seen in my life. And I think it's one of the most impressive airplanes that'll ever be.
I probably don't have any of the great stories that some of these other guys do. But I had probably, everything worked for me when we were flying the airplane. But I did fly one tour with Buzz before I left the program. And we had probably two interesting things that I would pass along to you. First, we were over on one deployment over at Kadena. And we took off, did the refueling, and shortly, I guess, after our climb out, the air conditioning system went full hot. And generally you would turn around and come back, and I said, "Buzz, I can do this if you can." And you're in a pressure suit, so you really rely on the cooling air to keep you cool. And I don't know how hot it got, but I know it probably got over 110, 115 degrees in the suit. It was hot. And I lost about 10 pounds on that mission. I don't know how much Buzz lost, but so that was the one thing. We came back and, of course, landed and ended up being a non-event. And the last flight that I had in the program, we had a mission over to the Soviet Union to look at subpins, and we took off. We had 5 refuelings, I think. Went over there, did our thing, and came back. And one of the most impressive things that I would say that Buzz did, he did a flyby the tower. Now, one of the things that I had never done in the airplane was do a flyby. So the sun was just coming up, and Buzz comes in, and reminds you of the Top Gun movie where, they do the flyby. So Buzz comes out over the runway and flies right by the tower, and then we turn around and land. So, thank you, Buzz.